It was a quiet evening when Earth's first warning came. A sudden burst of static filled the radio frequencies, and the Earth's defense systems detected something in deep space. At first, it was only a small blip, a faint trace that could be easily ignored. But then, the blip grew bigger, larger, and faster, like something enormous was heading their way. Within hours, the world's space agencies and military forces were on high alert. The Council of Galaxies was coming, and they were not coming in peace. On Earth, panic spread quickly. People gathered in groups, unsure of what was happening. The news channels flashed warnings, and government officials scrambled to prepare. The Council fleet, a powerful and ruthless force of alien ships, had been known to subjugate planets and civilizations without hesitation. Earth, in their eyes, was just another obstacle to be crushed. Across the globe, humanity's greatest minds worked tirelessly. The leaders of Earth knew they had one chance to survive. They needed something powerful, something far beyond their current military might. For years, Earth had been building a secret weapon, a warship unlike any other in the galaxy, the Dominus. But it was still unfinished. It was not ready. Yet, with no other option, humanity's leaders made a bold decision. They would launch it anyway. Inside a heavily secured underground facility, the final adjustments were made. The Dominus was massive, designed to withstand the most advanced weaponry the galaxy could throw at it. But there was no way to know for sure if it would be enough. The Council fleet was a force of nature, a collection of alien races with technology far superior to humanity's own. The humans could only hope their ingenuity and determination could match the power of their enemies. Up above, in the empty vastness of space, the Council fleet loomed. It consisted of hundreds of ships, their designs strange and intimidating, each one larger than any human-made vessel. Their weapons were devastating, and their tactics were unmatched. It was said that the Council had wiped out entire civilizations in the blink of an eye, and now they had Earth in their sights. As the Council's ships made their way into the solar system, humanity had no choice but to face the coming storm. The Dominus had only been partially tested, and its crew had little experience with such advanced technology. But they had something the Council didn't: the human spirit. They would fight for their homes, for their families, and for their future. This would be humanity's greatest test. The countdown to battle began. The Council fleet was close. Earth's fate rested in the hands of a ship that was still being perfected. Yet the hope of survival burned in the hearts of humanity's bravest souls. They were ready for whatever came next. The day had arrived. After years of secret research and endless hours of work, the human race was about to reveal their most powerful creation, the Dominus. But as it emerged from the shadows of the underground base, there was no excitement in the air, only a deep sense of anticipation and fear. The Council fleet was getting closer, and Earth's fate rested on the shoulders of a single ship. The Dominus wasn't like anything the galaxy had seen before. It was enormous, its dark metallic surface glistening under the harsh lights of the launch bay. The ship was almost twice the size of the largest human-made warship, a behemoth with weapons that had never been tested in real battle. Its design was a combination of advanced human engineering, cutting-edge technology, and the most powerful weapons humanity could create. But no one truly knew if it would work. It had never been tested in a real combat situation, and there were still a few systems that needed fine-tuning. The Dominus was a symbol of everything humanity had fought for. It was not just a warship, it was hope. It was the answer to the question: can humans survive against a galactic empire that had crushed countless civilizations before? As the ship's engines roared to life, the hum of the launch sequence echoed through the base, signaling that there was no turning back. The Dominus was ready, and Earth had no other choice but to send it into the heart of the battle. Inside the Dominus, the crew of soldiers, engineers, and scientists braced themselves for the unknown. The crew was a mix of experienced military personnel and young, eager pilots, all handpicked for this mission. They were nervous, of course. How could they not be? They were about to face a fleet that had defeated some of the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. But they also knew this was their one chance to defend their home, their families, their future. On the bridge of the Dominus, Captain Sarah Lawson stood, her eyes focused on the view ahead. She was calm, but inside, her heart was racing. As the leader of this mission, she carried the weight of humanity's hopes. She glanced around at the crew, their faces set with determination. They had trained for this moment, but no one could truly prepare for the battle that was about to unfold. "All systems are green," reported Lieutenant Marcus, his voice steady. "Ready for launch, Captain." Sarah nodded. "Let's do this." The Dominus slowly began to rise, its massive form lifting off the ground with a rumble that vibrated through the entire base. As it ascended, the Earth's skies seemed to darken with the presence of the Council fleet approaching. The ship's powerful engines burned brightly, propelling the Dominus into the depths of space. Back on Earth, the people watched anxiously, their eyes glued to the skies, knowing that this moment would define their future. The fate of the planet depended on a ship that was still untested in the face of overwhelming alien power. Yet, despite the uncertainty, there was a shared sense of pride. The Dominus wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's last hope, their declaration to the galaxy that they would not go down without a fight. As the Dominus disappeared into space, the world held its breath. It was now in the hands of a single ship and its crew. Would humanity survive? Would they defeat the might of the Council fleet? The answer, no one knew. But there was one thing that every human on Earth agreed on: no matter the outcome, they would fight until the very end. The Dominus sailed through the vastness of space, cutting a path toward the Council fleet. Captain Sarah Lawson stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the deep space surrounding them. The stars stretched out endlessly, but ahead, the enemy was closing in, fast. The ship was their last chance, and every crew member knew the weight of that responsibility. No one spoke much. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. On the bridge, the crew members worked in complete silence, their focus intense. Lieutenant Marcus monitored the ship's weapon systems, while Ensign Riley kept track of the enemy's movements. The alien fleet was now visible on their radar, hundreds of ships moving in a formation designed to crush any resistance. Each ship was more advanced than anything humans had encountered before. The Council's ships were equipped with energy shields that could block most attacks, and their weapons were devastating. Despite the odds, the crew of the Dominus was determined to hold their ground. "Captain, we're approaching their outer perimeter," Marcus reported, his voice steady, but betraying a hint of nervousness. Sarah nodded. "Steady, everyone. Let's see what this ship can really do." The Dominus shuddered as it entered the battle zone. Energy beams from the Council fleet lit up the void, slamming into the Dominus shields with violent force. The ship groaned under the pressure, but the shields held. Barely. Sarah's knuckles whitened as she gripped the armrests of her chair. The ship's design had never been tested against such overwhelming firepower, but it was holding for now. "Target locked," Marcus said. "Ready to fire." "Fire," Sarah commanded, her voice sharp. The Dominus fired its first volley of energy blasts, and the sheer force of the weapons rocked the ship. The alien ships, caught off guard by the accuracy and power of the attack, scrambled to retaliate. But the Dominus wasn't finished yet. As one enemy ship was destroyed in a brilliant explosion, another alien vessel fired back, its beam striking the Dominus' starboard side. The ship groaned as alarms blared, and sparks flew from several control panels. "Shields are weakening," Ensign Riley yelled, eyes wide with fear. "We can't take many more of those hits," Lieutenant Marcus added, his face pale. But Sarah didn't flinch. "Adjust shields to the port side. All power to forward weapons. We'll break through." With calculated precision, the crew responded. They maneuvered the Dominus, pushing it into an evasive orbit. The massive ship, though cumbersome, proved surprisingly agile in the hands of skilled pilots. The Dominus fired again, its weapons cutting through the enemy lines like a hot knife through butter. But the battle was far from over. The Council fleet retaliated fiercely, launching wave after wave of fighters to overwhelm the human warship. Hundreds of smaller, faster ships circled the Dominus, firing relentlessly. Despite the overwhelming odds, the human crew remained calm and focused. They worked together seamlessly, with each crew member knowing their role and executing it flawlessly. "Keep them off our tail," Sarah shouted as another volley of laser fire exploded just inches from the bridge windows. "We've got this," Marcus muttered to himself, though his hands gripped the controls so tightly his knuckles turned white. He knew that if they didn't find a way to take out more of the Council's ships, their chances of survival would slip away fast. But Sarah refused to back down. "Hold steady. We're not giving up today." As the battle raged on, the Dominus began to show its true potential. The enemy fleet, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves faced with something they hadn't expected: humanity's resilience. The crew of the Dominus had no choice but to keep fighting, and for the first time, they began to realize that they just might have a chance at victory. The battle had escalated faster than anyone could have anticipated. The Dominus was proving its worth, but the Council fleet was relentless. Despite the impressive firepower and resilience of humanity's ultimate warship, the alien forces were unlike anything the crew of the Dominus had ever encountered. They weren't just strong, they were cunning. The Council had mastered the art of psychological warfare, and they weren't above using it to break their enemies. On the bridge, Captain Sarah Lawson stared at the screens, her brow furrowed. The Council's ships had stopped attacking directly. Instead, they began to move in strange patterns, almost as if they were trying to confuse them. The Dominus sensors flickered, and several enemy ships disappeared from their radar. "Captain," said Lieutenant Marcus, his voice tense, "they've activated cloaking devices. We can't see them. They're surrounding us." Sarah's heart raced. The Dominus was not built for this kind of warfare. It was a heavy warship, designed for direct confrontation, not to play cat and mouse with fast, cloaked enemies. Yet, despite the Council's attempts to hide, Sarah knew they had one advantage: human ingenuity. "Ensign Riley," Sarah called, "I need a new strategy. Can you track them?" Riley nodded quickly, fingers flying across the console. "I'm working on it. Their cloaking tech is sophisticated, but it's not perfect. If we can predict their movements, we can force them out of hiding. Keep trying. We can't just sit here waiting for them to make the next move." Sarah stood up, walking over to Marcus. "We need to disrupt their strategy." The crew worked feverishly, pushing the Dominus to its limits. Meanwhile, the Council's fleet launched small, agile fighters, speeding toward the Dominus with lightning-fast attacks. The humans were struggling to track the cloaked ships, but they weren't giving up. The Dominus may not have been built for stealth combat, but it was built for one thing: survival. "We need to make them underestimate us," Sarah said, her voice calm but determined. "Let them think we're weaker than we are. Give them a false sense of security, and then strike." The crew immediately understood. It wasn't about power. It was about misdirection. "Lower the ship's shield strength on the port side," Sarah ordered. "Make it seem like we're vulnerable." "Are you sure, Captain?" Marcus asked, his eyes wide. "That's risky." "We have no choice," Sarah replied. "Do it." As the Dominus dropped its shields, the Council's fighters took the bait. They rushed in, believing they had found an easy target. But the crew of the Dominus was ready. "Now," Sarah commanded. The Dominus cannons fired at full force, catching the alien ships off guard. They had assumed the humans would fall into their trap, but instead, the humans had turned the trap around on them. The fighters, unable to react in time, were obliterated in an instant. The Dominus weapons, powerful beyond imagination, tore through their ranks. The remaining Council ships quickly realized the danger, but it was too late. The humans had taken back the initiative. "Excellent work, everyone," Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with pride. "We turned the tables. Keep pushing forward." As the battle continued, the Dominus proved its worth once more. The Council fleet had underestimated the creativity and cunning of humanity, but this was only the beginning. There was still much more to fight for. As the first signs of victory began to show, the crew of the Dominus knew one thing for sure: this war wasn't over yet. They had made their mark, but they weren't done fighting. And they would not back down. The Dominus cut through space, its massive form moving steadily toward the heart of the Council fleet. The skirmish had been intense, but now the true battle was about to begin. Captain Sarah Lawson stood tall on the bridge, her eyes focused on the ever-growing number of enemy ships that filled the screens before her. The crew had just delivered a crushing blow to the Council's forces, but it had only slowed them down. The real test was still ahead. "Captain, the enemy is regrouping," Lieutenant Marcus reported, his fingers moving quickly over the console. "They're forming up for another wave. There are at least 50 ships coming our way, and they're getting ready for a direct assault." Sarah didn't flinch. She had known this was coming. The Council wasn't just going to give up after one defeat, but the Dominus had proved itself, and now it was time to show just how far humanity's ingenuity could take them. "Ensign Riley, prepare evasive maneuvers," Sarah ordered, her voice calm. "We need to outsmart them, not outgun them." As Riley quickly adjusted the ship's course, Sarah watched as the first wave of Council ships closed in. They were big, much bigger than most of humanity's ships, but the Dominus was built for this very purpose. The ship wasn't just about brute force, it was about precision, strategy, and clever tactics. And that was where the humans had an edge. The first few enemy ships came within range, and the Dominus fired its weapons, its energy blasts lighting up the vast darkness of space. The explosions were massive, tearing through the alien ships, but the Council wasn't easily deterred. They retaliated quickly, firing their own deadly beams at the Dominus. The ship rocked under the force of the hits, alarms blaring as shields flickered dangerously. But the Dominus held firm, it all withstanding the barrage. "Shields at 50%, Ensign Riley shouted, his voice tense. "We can take it," Sarah said, her gaze unwavering. "Stay focused. Keep pushing forward." The Dominus fired again, this time aiming for the weak points of the enemy ships. The Council had been counting on their superior firepower, but they hadn't anticipated the Dominus' precision targeting. One by one, their ships began to falter. The human ship wasn't just stronger, it was smarter. But the Council had more tricks up their sleeves. Suddenly, a group of smaller, faster ships darted out from behind the larger Council vessels. These ships, unlike anything the Dominus had encountered before, were equipped with advanced warp drives, allowing them to move at speeds faster than the human ship could react. They fired, and the Dominus took another hit, its systems shaking. "Captain, we can't keep up with them," Marcus exclaimed. "They're too fast." Sarah's mind raced. She had to think quickly. The Dominus couldn't outrun these ships, but maybe it didn't need to. They had to outthink them. "Turn off all external lights and go dark," Sarah commanded. "I want us to go completely silent. No emissions, no radar. They won't know where we are." As the Dominus powered down its external systems, the smaller ships of the Council flew past them, unable to detect the human warship hiding in the shadows. Sarah knew they had only a few seconds before the Council realized they'd been duped. "Now, fire at will," she ordered. The Dominus lit up the darkness with a series of precise, powerful shots, hitting the unsuspecting alien ships. The small fighters were caught off guard, and within moments, several exploded in a brilliant flash of light. As the battle continued, the Dominus began to gain the upper hand. The Council's fleet, although powerful, had underestimated the humans' ability to think on their feet. Each new tactic, each unexpected move, pushed the aliens back further. But there was still more to come. This battle wasn't over yet. "Keep them off our tail," Sarah said, her voice steady. "We have them on the ropes, but we need to finish this." The crew of the Dominus was fighting not just for survival, but for a future, one where humanity could stand tall among the stars. With every strike, they showed the Council that Earth would not be so easily defeated. The Dominus was more than a ship. It was a symbol of everything humans could achieve when they refused to back down. The battle in deep space raged on, and the Dominus was proving itself to be a formidable force. Captain Sarah Lawson and her crew had faced wave after wave of Council ships, and despite the overwhelming odds, they had managed to hold their ground. But as the enemy fleet regrouped, something changed. There was a sudden shift in the atmosphere, and Sarah could sense that the Council had something new planned. "Captain," Lieutenant Marcus called, his voice filled with tension. "They're not attacking in the same way anymore. There's something different about their formation." Sarah's eyes narrowed. She studied the approaching fleet on the screen. The Council's ships were pulling back slightly, creating a strange gap in the formation. It was too quiet, too still. Sarah could feel her heart rate quicken as she tried to anticipate the next move. "Whatever they're planning, we need to be ready," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "Prepare for anything." Suddenly, a new ship appeared at the front of the Council fleet, its design unlike anything the humans had seen before. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of the Dominus. The ship had a dark, menacing appearance, with jagged edges and a sleek, alien shape that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. The moment it entered the field, the Dominus sensors began to overload. "Captain, this is a weapon," Ensign Riley reported, his voice shaky. "The readings are off the charts. This ship's energy levels are beyond anything we've ever seen." Sarah's stomach sank. She had known the Council wasn't going to let them win so easily. But this was something new, something terrifying. The new ship, massive and intimidating, began to charge up its weapon systems. Energy crackled around it as it prepared to fire, and Sarah could see the enormous beam building at the heart of the ship. It was a weapon unlike anything they had encountered, and it looked capable of wiping out entire fleets in an instant. "Brace for impact," Sarah shouted as she slammed her fist onto the console. The crew scrambled to prepare for the worst. But before the weapon could fire, the Council ship's sudden appearance triggered a series of attacks from smaller, faster ships. The remaining Council vessels moved in with renewed force, launching heavy bombardments from all sides. "We've got incoming from every angle," Marcus called, trying to keep up with the swarm of attacks. "The new ship is blocking our signals. We can't track their movements." The Dominus shields flickered under the pressure, absorbing strike after strike. Sarah gritted her teeth, refusing to let the panic set in. This was a battle they couldn't afford to lose. The crew had already fought so hard, but the new weapon from the Council could change everything. "Captain," Ensign Riley said, his voice steady despite the chaos, "we can't fight this with brute force alone. We need to find a weakness in that ship." Sarah thought quickly. She had to outthink the enemy. She knew that much. They had the Dominus, but it couldn't take many more hits like this. She scanned the readings on the enemy ship again. Something about its power was off. Too much energy focused in one place. There had to be a flaw. "We're going to take a risk," Sarah said, her eyes narrowing. "Lieutenant, prepare a concentrated strike. Focus on the weapon systems. If we can disrupt their power flow, we might be able to disable that ship before it gets a chance to fire." Marcus hesitated. "Are you sure? One shot, and we might not survive the backlash." "We don't have a choice," Sarah replied, her voice resolute. "Do it." The Dominus positioned itself to face the massive ship head-on. The crew moved with perfect coordination, knowing the stakes were higher than ever. They needed to hit the Council's secret weapon, and they needed to do it now. The energy from the Dominus weapons built up quickly. Its cannons charged and aimed at the heart of the enemy ship. With a single command, Sarah sent the shot flying. The beam shot forward, cutting through the vacuum of space with deadly accuracy. The energy from the Dominus weapons collided with the Council's ship's power source, triggering a massive explosion. The resulting shockwave rocked the Dominus, but when the smoke cleared, the alien weapon had been disabled. The Council's flagship was silent, but the victory didn't come without cost. The crew of the Dominus was battered and bruised, and there was no time to rest. The enemy was far from defeated, and Sarah knew the real battle was only just beginning. The Dominus floated in the aftermath of the explosion. The once thriving space battle had turned into chaos, with the Council's massive flagship now reduced to a pile of burning debris. Captain Sarah Lawson stood at the bridge, her mind racing. They had done it. They had taken down the Council's secret weapon. But victory came at a steep price. The Dominus had taken serious damage, and their shields were flickering dangerously low. "Captain, we're holding steady, but our hull integrity is weakening," Lieutenant Marcus reported, his face grim as he watched the readings on his screen. "We need to regroup and find a safe place to repair." Sarah nodded but didn't reply immediately. She knew they couldn't afford to retreat now. The Council might have lost their flagship, but the remaining fleet was still powerful, and they wouldn't give up without a fight. The Dominus was a symbol of humanity's strength, and Sarah couldn't let them think the Warship was vulnerable. "We can't stop now," she said, finally breaking the silence. "We push forward. The Council is on the ropes. Let's make sure they don't have the chance to recover." The crew of the Dominus rallied behind her, despite the exhaustion and damage they had suffered. They knew this was their moment, and they were ready to see it through. The remaining Council ships, though disorganized, were regrouping. Some had already begun to retreat, but others were preparing for another attack. It was time to finish this. Ensign Riley, scan for any weakness in their remaining forces, Sarah commanded. "We need to hit them where it hurts." Riley's fingers danced across his console as he processed the data. "There's a gap in their formation near the back. A few smaller ships seem to be isolated from the main force. If we can get in there, we might be able to do some real damage." "That's our target," Sarah said. "We break through their lines, hit those ships hard, and show them that we're not backing down. Full speed ahead." The Dominus powered forward, engines roaring as the warship surged through space. The remaining Council ships had not anticipated such a bold move. They had been prepared for a retreat, a final push from the humans to hold on to their last ounce of strength. But the Dominus didn't stop. It moved like a freight train, plowing through the enemy's defenses with the fury of a wounded animal desperate for survival. "All guns, fire at will," Sarah shouted, her voice commanding as the Dominus unleashed its full firepower. The energy blasts tore through the enemy ships, disintegrating them with ease. Each shot from the Dominus seemed to rip apart the Council's forces, sending them into disarray. The alien fleet, once so confident in their strength, was now falling apart. The crew of the Dominus didn't slow down. They pushed forward, relentless in their pursuit of victory. "Captain, we're tearing them apart," Lieutenant Marcus yelled. "They're losing control. Their ships are scattering. They're breaking formation." Sarah smiled, though she knew it was far from over. The Dominus had given humanity a fighting chance, but the war wasn't won yet. As the Council's fleet splintered, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Against all odds, humanity was showing the galaxy that they wouldn't just survive. They would dominate. "Keep pushing," Sarah ordered. "We end this now." The final phase of the battle had begun. With their backs against the wall, the humans fought like never before. The Dominus was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of everything humanity had fought for. The determination, the will to survive, and the creativity that allowed them to outsmart their enemies. The Council fleet might have had the numbers and the technology, but the humans had something stronger. The will to fight for their future. And that was a force the Council had never anticipated. The Dominus surged forward, cutting through space with the power of 1,000 storms. Captain Sarah Lawson stood at the helm, eyes locked on the chaotic scene before her. The remaining council ships were in disarray, their once strong formation shattered. Their flagship had been destroyed, and now their forces were retreating. But Sarah knew this wasn't over. The council would never let a defeat like this go unpunished. They would fight until the last ship, and the Dominus had to be ready. "Captain, they're retreating," Lieutenant Marcus reported, his voice low with caution. "But they've got one last vessel at the far edge of their formation. It's their last hope, their command ship. If we take that down, the battle is ours." Sarah nodded. She could see the ship on the screens, a massive vessel, even larger than the one they had destroyed earlier. Its dark silhouette loomed on the horizon, surrounded by smaller ships acting as bodyguards. It was the final piece of the Council's war machine, and if it survived, they would rebuild, and the war could drag on for much longer. "We finish this now," Sarah said, her voice steady. "Ensign Riley, plot a course. Full speed ahead." The crew of the Dominus didn't hesitate. They were battered and bruised, their ship barely holding together, but they knew what they had to do. This was humanity's last chance to end the war, to secure their future among the stars. The Dominus pushed forward with everything it had, engines blazing, cutting through the void toward the Council's command ship. The enemy tried to regroup, but it was too late. As the Dominus drew closer, the remaining Council ships attempted to block the human warship, desperate to protect their flagship. But they were disorganized, panicked by the loss of their leadership. They couldn't keep up with the speed and precision of the Dominus. The crew fired relentlessly, their energy beams tearing through the alien ships with ease, leaving nothing but burning wreckage behind. "Captain, we're almost in range," Marcus said, his voice tense with anticipation. "Good. Get ready to fire everything we've got," Sarah commanded, her gaze never leaving the command ship. The Dominus closed in. The remaining Council ships, though smaller and faster, couldn't match the firepower of the Dominus. The warship's cannons lit up the dark expanse of space, firing with devastating force. Explosions erupted across the Council ships, sending debris scattering in every direction. As the Dominus drew nearer, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. If they could land a single shot on the command ship, they would end this war once and for all. She steeled herself, ready for whatever came next. "Fire," Sarah commanded. The Dominus unleashed a powerful blast, its energy weapons homed in on the command ship. The beam shot forward with deadly accuracy, cutting through space. The moment it hit the alien vessel, the impact was catastrophic. The command ship shuddered and then erupted in a massive explosion, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. For a moment, everything fell silent. The vastness of space seemed to hold its breath. Then the remnants of the command ship drifted into space. Its shattered remains a testament to the fury of humanity's power. The Council fleet, now leaderless and broken, began to retreat in panic. The once proud force had been reduced to nothing, its final hope destroyed. The Dominus had done it. Humanity had done it. Sarah stood, watching the chaos unfold on the screens, but her eyes were filled with a quiet sense of triumph. The war was over. The Council had underestimated humanity, and now they would never forget the power of the human spirit. "Victory is ours," she whispered, barely believing it herself. The Dominus had proven itself to be more than just a ship. It was the embodiment of humanity's resilience, creativity, and determination. The Council had come to conquer, but in the end, it was the humans who had dominated. And as the remains of the Council fleet drifted into the cold, dark void of space, Sarah knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. Humanity had won this battle, but the galaxy would soon know that the Dominus was just a glimpse of what Earth was capable of. The stars had opened up to them, and they were ready to take their place among them. With the Council's command ship reduced to debris, the tide of the battle shifted dramatically. The remaining alien ships, scattered and leaderless, began to fall apart. The once unified fleet had been shattered, their carefully coordinated tactics crumbling as panic set in. The Dominus had delivered a decisive blow, and now the Council fleet was on the verge of collapse. "Captain, they're retreating," Lieutenant Marcus said, his voice filled with disbelief. "The remaining ships are breaking formation and trying to escape." Sarah stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the battlefield. The explosion of the Council flagship had left a crater of silence in the air. No more coordinated attacks, no more precision. The Council's forces were splintering, their remaining ships desperate to flee. But they were too late. Humanity had already struck the final blow. "Ensign Riley, track their movements," Sarah ordered, her tone calm but urgent. "We can't let them escape." The Dominus pushed forward, the massive ship rumbling as it cut through space, its cannons still blazing with the fury of their last attack. The remaining Council ships scattered in every direction, trying to flee from the wrath of the human warship, but they were no match for the Dominus. With each passing moment, the distance between them and their escape grew smaller, and one by one, the alien ships were picked off by the relentless firepower of the Dominus. One down, Marcus called out as another enemy ship exploded in a burst of light. "We've got them on the run." Sarah didn't let up. She had seen this before, the enemy retreating, trying to lick their wounds and regroup. But there would be no regrouping this time. The Dominus wasn't going to stop until the Council fleet was nothing more than a memory. "Fire again," she commanded. "Take them out before they can regroup." The Dominus unleashed another volley of energy blasts, and the remaining Council ships were torn apart in a flurry of sparks and explosions. One ship after another was destroyed, leaving a trail of debris scattered across the void of space. The alien forces, once so powerful, were now nothing more than a ragged collection of ships fleeing from the inevitable. "Captain, they're losing everything," Ensign Riley reported. "Their ships are scattered, and the remaining fighters are retreating into the outer system. It looks like they've lost the will to fight." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. The Council, the once dominant force in the galaxy, was broken. But she knew that this victory was only the beginning. The Council would have other fleets, other armies, but this was humanity's message to the galaxy. They would not be conquered. They would fight, and they would win. "Let them run," Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with the weight of the moment. "We've shown them that we're not afraid." As the last of the Council's ships disappeared into the distance, the Dominus remained in the heart of the battlefield. The ship's cannons fell silent, and the crew allowed themselves a moment of quiet. The battle was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. The Council's war was finished, but Earth's place in the galaxy had just begun. "Captain," Marcus said, his voice tinged with awe. "We did it. We really did it." Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the remains of the battlefield. "Yes, we did. And we'll be ready for whatever comes next." The Dominus had proven itself as more than just a weapon. It was the embodiment of humanity's spirit, determination, and ability to adapt. The galaxy had seen that humans would not be intimidated. They would stand tall. And now, the Council had learned that humanity didn't just survive. It thrived. The Dominus hovered in the empty space, surrounded by the scattered remains of the Council fleet. The final battle was over. The hum of the warship's engines echoed through the quiet bridge as Captain Sarah Lawson stood before the view screen, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. The victory was undeniable, but as the crew surveyed the debris-filled void, a strange silence had settled over them. There were no cheers, no celebrations. The fight was won, but the realization of what they had achieved was still sinking in. "Captain," Lieutenant Marcus said, breaking the silence, "the Council fleet is completely gone. We've destroyed or scattered everything. There's no sign of any other reinforcements in the system." Sarah nodded slowly, her mind racing. The war was over, but now came the hard part. Humanity had defeated a galactic empire that had ruled the stars for centuries. What would the galaxy think of them now? What would other races think of Earth? The power that the Dominus had shown was more than just military might. It was a message to the universe. Earth was no longer a small, insignificant planet. They had proven their strength. "Do we know where the rest of their forces are?" Sarah asked, looking toward Ensign Riley. Riley worked his console for a moment before responding. "It looks like the Council has pulled back to their home systems. They're regrouping, but they'll be too far to threaten us for some time." "Good," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "We've bought ourselves time. Time to rebuild and time to prepare for the future." The bridge fell silent again, each crew member processing the weight of what had just happened. They had won, but in truth, the war had only just begun in another sense. Humanity had made its first major move into the galaxy, and their actions would echo across the stars. There would be those who celebrated their victory, and there would be those who feared them. "Captain, we've received a message from Earth," Lieutenant Marcus announced after a few moments. "It's from the United Earth government. They'd want us to return." Sarah felt a sense of pride surge through her. Earth was watching. The people were waiting for news, for hope. They had faced the fear of losing everything, but now they would see that humanity could rise to any challenge. "Send them our coordinates. We'll head back home," she said, turning to the crew. "But first, we need to make sure the Dominus is ready for whatever comes next." The crew set to work, securing the ship and preparing for their return. They had faced the Council's full wrath and emerged victorious. Now they would return to Earth, not as survivors, but as conquerors. The Dominus wasn't just a symbol of military strength. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, determination, and resilience. Earth had shown the galaxy that they would not bow to any empire, no matter how powerful. Humanity had proven its worth, and now they were ready to stand on equal footing with the stars. As the Dominus slowly turned toward Earth, Sarah Lawson looked out over the vastness of space one last time. The Council had been defeated, but humanity's journey was only beginning. The universe was vast, and now, for the first time, it was open to them, and they would not be afraid. "We've made our mark," Sarah whispered, a small smile forming on her lips, "and we will never back down." The Dominus engines roared to life, and with that, humanity's new era began. The stars were no longer out of reach. They were theirs to claim.